guide. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Why did the Ukraine FBI informant file refer you as the guy who testified? Why is that term really applied? Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
Why did I ask such a dumb question?
So he's just not going to answer to any of it. They are. I swear to you, this is why they have Gavin Newsom waiting in the wings. I was going to talk about that a little later. Let me bring it up now, though. So Brian Kilmeade's a friend of mine. He and I actually have the same agent. Brian's a dear friend of mine. I've known Brian for years, and he had asked me to go on with him last night. I have friends that are everywhere on both sides of certain issues with cable news, and I'm being friends. And although there's some things I don't do, but he had brought that up, and he when we were talking about this yesterday, and I had mentioned the fact that, can you imagine? I mean, because Gavin Newsom is not acting like a campaign surrogate. And I know I talked about this just a little bit yesterday, but I keep coming back to this because I think this is fairly significant. Think about all the times, right or left, when a potential or a former challenger decides that we're going to back the campaign of the incumbent, and then they go out and they do media, they do TV hits, whether it's on CNN or MSNBC or Fox or whatever, on behalf of that candidate. Now, what do they talk about? They talk about that candidate. They talk about that candidate's policies, and they have at that point, because if they're acting as a surrogate for the campaign officially, then they bring them in and they give them suggested, like, here's what we're doing on policy, here's what we're covering on this. That's how campaigns work. And that's why you see a lot of the surrogates say the same thing, because they try to stay on message. I've seen Biden surrogates out there. I've seen elected officials. I've seen former elected officials. You see Biden surrogates out there, and you can tell who they are. I mean, they're brought on cable news for that purpose. But I want you to contrast them with how Gavin Newsom and what he's doing, how he's doing. He's not acting like a surrogate. What is he talking about when he goes on cable news? He talks about himself. He talks about California. And then he goes after, not really Trump, he goes after DeSantis. It's weird. And every time he's given an interview, and normally I don't do this with Democrat candidates, not as much as I've done with this, he really doesn't talk about Biden at all. And if you notice, some of them have been written interviews, so it's not something I can actually play. Like, they'll reach out and get quotes from him. But he always pivots the focus away, especially if it comes through the perspective of a Biden policy. He always pivots it away from Biden to himself. He is not acting like a surrogate, because he's not. Now, he went out there and said he backs Biden, and that's great, et cetera, et cetera. But then he's not. Normally when they do that, they act like surrogates. They're not doing that. Not doing that at all. In fact, he sounds like he is still in the running. He's on the side. So he's serving two purposes. Newsom is simultaneously the attack dog for Democrats that Biden should be, and I think Democrats are using him in that capacity, but he's also the backup. So that's why he's not out there carrying Biden's coattails, because he's serving two purposes. He's being a team player for Democrats, and he's being an attack dog, but without looking like he's some stand for Joe Biden, so that he doesn't look like he's not making himself second to Biden in that regard. So it's a very interesting strategy, and he's maintaining focus on he's not really talking about Biden. He's talking about California. He focuses on his policies, even though they're trash, but to the point where it almost looks, it's like you wonder, why is he going out there and putting himself out there like this? California's, it's doing horribly. I have a story here. I literally have a story that's coming up. Californians are fleeing for Texas so fast, U-Haul has run out of trucks. This is like the second summer in a row that U-Haul has run out of trucks for people leaving California. That's bad. They're going to Texas and Florida. This is so bad. And he, even at the detriment of himself, is doing this because he is that desperate to not have it be about Biden. I'm telling you, It might seem dumb that he sat down with Sean, and it might seem dumb that he's like making all these remarks, but he's doing this to keep the attention on himself, even if it means he's got to throw himself kind of a little bit at the right and take some of the arrows for it. That's what it's going to cost for him to stay in that role. It's very, very interesting to watch the strategy play out. He's not going anywhere. He's waiting in the wings. Remember when Biden was out of the country and he went and held a press conference at the White House? Newsom did that, remember? It's weird, right? Like he made himself comfortable. He walked in like he owned the place. It's weird.